The church was packed, every pew filled with devoted worshippers eager to hear Pastor Malik deliver his Sunday sermon. He stood tall at the altar, his voice steady, his hands resting on the worn edges of the pulpit. His wife, Keisha, sat in the front row, watching him with admiration. The air carried the scent of burning candles and fresh flowers from the altar's arrangement. Then the church doors burst open. A loud bang echoed as the wooden doors slammed against the wall, silencing the choir. Heads turned toward the entrance. A man stood in the doorway, breathing ragged, his eyes blazing with fury. It was Tariq. His footsteps pounded against the floor as he moved down the aisle, passing stunned faces and whispered prayers. His fingers twitched by his side, and with every step he took, the tension in the room tightened like a noose. Malik gripped the pulpit, his stomach churning, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. "You promised me," Tariq's voice cracked, slicing through the stillness. A wave of murmurs swept through the congregation. Keisha turned toward her husband, confusion and fear flickering in her eyes. "Malik, what is he talking about?" she whispered. Malik opened his mouth, but no words came. The weight of his secrets crushed any response he might have offered. Tariq stepped closer, his hands shaking. "You told me you'd leave her," he said, voice trembling. "You said we'd finally be together." Gasps rippled through the church. Malik closed his eyes and took a shaky breath. He had always known this day would come, but he kept convincing himself he had more time. "Tariq, please," he finally said, voice low and pleading. Tariq shook his head, his breath shallow and uneven. "You lied to me for 8 years. I waited. I loved you. But you were never going to leave her." The congregation sat frozen in shock, eyes bouncing between the desperate man and the pastor they had respected for years. "Tariq, we can talk about this," Malik said, stepping forward slightly. "Talk." Tariq let out a bitter laugh. "There's nothing left to say." His right hand rose from his side, a flash of silver. A collective gasp filled the church as the gun came into view. Keisha's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. Malik's breath caught in his throat, every muscle in his body locking in place. "You lied to me," Tariq whispered, voice raw with betrayal. And then he pulled the trigger. Before we go further, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for some of the most jaw-dropping real-life crime stories. Now, let's peel back the layers of how Pastor Malik ended up here. Malik had known since he was 16. The realization settled in his bones like a stone he couldn't shake. His eyes lingered too long on his male classmates. His stomach fluttered every time his best friend laughed. The warmth in his chest was undeniable, but so was the shame. He had been raised to believe love only came one way, and what he felt didn't fit the mold. One night, after weeks of sleepless torment, he summoned the courage to tell his father. The man of God stared at him, silent and unreadable. The pause dragged on, each second a drumbeat of dread in Malik's chest. Finally, his father spoke, "We'll pray." That night, Malik knelt in the living room, surrounded by family. Hands pressed into his shoulders. Whispers filled a room. About demons, about temptation. His mother sobbed. His father's voice thundered, calling for spirits to be cast out. Malik swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded when they asked if he felt lighter. But nothing changed. At 21, his father introduced him to Keisha, beautiful, composed, from a family with deep roots in the church. "She'll fix you," his father said. The words clung to Malik like chains, dragging him into a future he didn't want. A year later, he married her. He tried to live the life expected of him. He preached every Sunday, held Keisha's hand during service, whispered prayers at night. He was the rock of his church, admired, trusted, revered. But in the quiet moments, when he was alone, the truth clawed at him. No sermon, no prayer, no forced smile could change what lived inside. Then 8 years ago, he met Tariq. It wasn't just another hidden affair. Tariq was different. They met at a religious conference, surrounded by scripture and ceremonial warmth. A simple conversation turned intimate. When their hands brushed, Malik felt something awaken, something he had buried long ago. Their first night together was electric, whispered secrets, lingering touches, and truths they had never dared speak. For the first time, Malik felt seen. Malik often stayed at Tariq's apartment, a small sanctuary where he could breathe. They cooked, watched old movies, held each other through the night. And yet, every time Malik returned home, the emptiness returned with him. Tariq made him feel whole. But fantasy erodes under the weight of reality. The more Malik stayed, the harder it became to leave. He let his guard down at Tariq's place, living a truth he could never publicly claim. But eventually Tariq wanted more. "I can't keep being your secret," he said one night, frustration simmering. "I need more than stolen hours. I love you, Tariq. I just..." "Then prove it." But Malik never did. The fleeting moments weren't enough anymore. Week after week, year after year, Tariq watched Malik retreat, and with every broken promise, resentment grew. The final blow came when Malik forgot their anniversary. That night, Malik lay beside Keisha. Across town, Tariq sat in his apartment, staring at his phone. Rage and heartbreak churned in his chest. He called. "You lied again." "Tariq, I just need more time." "No," Tariq snapped. "No more time. I waited long enough." He hung up. His hands trembled. The rage settled in, thick and unforgiving. The next Sunday, Tariq walked into the sanctuary, and this time, he wasn't leaving without answers. The room buzzed with praise and devotion, the choir in full harmony. Pastor Malik stood at the pulpit, delivering a sermon like he had hundreds of times before. But his voice cracked. His gaze kept drifting to the back of the room. He felt Tariq before he saw him. Tariq stood with arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes burning. He wasn't there for scripture. He was there to be heard. When the service ended, Malik barely had time to breathe before Tariq cornered him in the hallway. "We need to talk." "Not here," Malik whispered. "Then when?" "I'm done waiting. I'm done hiding. I deserve more." Malik looked around. Panic set in. Keisha stood nearby, chatting with a deacon. "Please," he said, voice barely audible. "Not now." Tariq's expression hardened. "When it's convenient for you. When no one's watching. That's not love, Malik. That's fear." Malik had no answer, because Tariq was right. Tariq's voice dropped, thick with pain. "I loved you. I would have given you everything. But you chose this lie, over me, over yourself." Malik opened his mouth, but Tariq was already gone. Gone, walking out the church doors for the last time. Malik stood frozen, torn between the truth he buried and the man who had just walked away with a piece of his soul. He wanted to run after him, to fall to his knees, to beg. But the weight of his father's voice, his congregation's expectations, his fear, it all held him in place. As the doors shut behind Tariq, Malik knew. He had just lost the only person who ever made him feel whole. But even that heartbreak wasn't enough to make him change. Not yet. 1 month later, Malik sat in his car outside Tariq's apartment. The city buzzed around him, neon lights blinking, laughter spilling from nearby bars. He should have turned the key and driven home. But home felt like a lie now, and he wasn't ready to let go of the only truth he'd ever known. He stepped out and inhaled the crisp night air. Every step toward Tariq's door felt like marching into battle, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. The door opened. Tariq stood there with his arms crossed, face unreadable. The warmth Malik once found at his eyes had cooled into distance, caution. I just, Malik swallowed hard. "I need to see you." Tariq scoffed. "No. You need both worlds, me in the shadows, her in the spotlight. I told you I'm done." "Just hear me out," Malik pleaded. "Give me 2 weeks. That's all I'm asking. I swear I'll tell Keisha. I'll come clean. I need a little more time." Tariq exhaled and leaned against the doorframe. 2 weeks? And then what? Another excuse. Another delay. "No," Malik said, his voice cracking. "No more lies. I promise. I just need to do this the right way." Tariq studied him in silence. Then, without a word, he stepped aside. Malik walked in. He knew words weren't enough anymore. Promises had lost their meaning. He had to show Tariq he meant it. The next day, he skipped a church function, something he had never done before, and spent hours picking the perfect gifts, a leather-bound journal, because Tariq loved to write. A sleek watch, understated but elegant, because Tariq always lost track of time. A bottle of the cologne Tariq wore that first night they shared, a scent that would take them both back to the beginning. When he arrived at Tariq's apartment, bags in hand, Tariq looked skeptical. "This bribery?" "No," Malik said, setting the gifts down. "Just reminders. Of us. Of what we are." Tariq picked up the watch, his fingers tracing its surface. He didn't say anything, but he didn't push it away either. That was enough. By Friday, Malik had everything planned. He booked a secluded cabin in the mountains, quiet, peaceful, far from the eyes of the congregation. A space where they could just be. When he picked Tariq up, There was hesitation in his eyes. But he got in the car. The drive was silent at first, the tension heavy between them. But as the city faded into winding mountain roads and pine-scented air, Tariq softened. He rolled down the window, letting the breeze hit his face. "This place better have decent food," Tariq muttered. Malik grinned. "I stocked the kitchen myself. Got all your favorites." Tariq shot him a look. "You remembered?" "Of course I did." They reached the cabin just as the sun slipped behind the trees, casting gold across the porch. Inside, the fireplace crackled, blankets were draped on the couch, jazz hummed softly from a Bluetooth speaker. Malik had set the scene perfectly. That night they cooked together. Tariq stirred the pasta while Malik leaned on the counter, watching him, his eyes soft with longing. "You're staring," Tariq said, without turning. "I know. I missed this. I missed you." Tariq paused, then sighed. "You've still got 2 weeks. If you don't tell her, Malik, I will." "I swear to you," Malik said quickly. "I'm not losing you." Tariq nodded but said nothing more. The weekend passed like a dream. They hiked together in the mornings, brushing hands but never fully holding. In the evenings, they sat on the porch under the stars, the silence between them filled with everything unsaid. On the final night, Malik pulled Tariq into a slow dance, no music, just the rhythm of their breath and the beating of their hearts. "I don't want this to end," Malik whispered against Tariq's temple. Tariq pulled back, searching Malik's eyes. "Then don't let it." Malik nodded. 2 weeks. That was all the time he had left to finally tell Keisha the truth and ask for a divorce. 1 week later, Malik stood at the pulpit. He had rehearsed every word he planned to say to Keisha. He'd visualized the confrontation. But instead of speaking his truth, he recited scripture, like nothing had changed. Tariq waited outside the sanctuary. Breath shallow, eyes sharp. He had believed Malik before too many times. But this time had to be different. This time had to mean something. So he waited. But when the sermon began, Tariq saw it, saw the lie plain on Malik's face. He wasn't going to do it. Not today. Not ever. Tariq felt himself go numb, as if he were floating outside his body, watching the last 8 years unravel like a cruel joke. Every sacrifice, every whispered promise, every stolen moment, all of it meaningless. The betrayal hollowed him out. All that remained was raw, seething rage. He stepped into the church with the gun tucked beneath his jacket, his heart pounding, palms slick with sweat. The murmurs died as the doors slammed shut behind him. Heads turned. Gasps spread through the pews. Keisha, seated in the front row, looked up with confusion. "Who is that man?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. Malik's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His practiced calm, the steady control he wore like a second skin, began to crack. "Keisha, I can explain." Tariq laughed, bitter, sharp, slicing through the stillness like a blade. "Oh, now you want to explain? After 8 years of lies? After all those promises?" The congregation froze, no one dare move. Fear rippled through the room like a current. "Please," Malik said, his voice barely audible. "Let's talk about this." "Talk." Tariq's voice wavered. "I gave you everything, my time, my love, my life. And you were never going to leave her, were you?" Keisha turned slowly toward her husband, her hands gripping the hem of her dress. "Malik, what is he talking about?" Malik took a small step forward. Tariq lifted the gun. Gasps erupted. A child whimpered in the back. Someone covered their mouth in horror. "Don't move," Tariq warned, his voice trembling. "Don't lie to me again." Malik raised his hands, palms open. "Tariq, just listen." "Listen." Tariq's grip tightened. "I listened for 8 years. I listened every time you said it was almost time. I listened when you begged me to stay. When you promised you'd choose me." Tears burned Tariq's eyes. His hands trembled. The gun wavered. "Put it down," Malik pleaded. "Please. We don't have to do this." "No." Tariq shouted. "You don't get to lie your way out of this. You don't get to stand up there and preach righteousness when you've lived a damn lie." His voice cracked. His arms shook. "I waited for you. I loved you. And you never even had the decency to choose me." Keisha's voice broke. "Malik, is it true?" Silence. Long crushing. Malik's throat tightened. A single bead of sweat rolled down his temple. He could hear his heart, thunderous, unrelenting. Tariq's breath hitched. "Say it. Say the truth, Malik." Malik opened his mouth, tongue thick and dry. For years he had lied. For years he had worn a mask. And now, face to face with the wreckage. All he had left was the truth. Yes. The word was barely above a whisper, but it shattered everything. Keisha gasped and stumbled backward. Her hands flew to her chest. Her legs buckled beneath her. The congregation sat in stunned silence, eyes darting between their beloved pastor and the man who had just exposed him. Tariq exhaled shakily. The gun dipped slightly. His rage had carried him this far, but now, standing there with Malik laid bare, the weight of it all began to crush him. His hands shook violently. His chest heaved. "You ruined me," he whispered. "You ruined everything." Tears streamed down Malik's face. "I'm sorry." The gun wavered. Tariq let out a sob, loud, guttural, aching. The judgment, the whispers, the lies. They pressed in on him from all sides. And then, a single deafening crack split the air. Screams erupted. Chaos swept through the sanctuary like wildfire. Keisha collapsed to her knees, shrieking in horror. Congregants pushed, scrambled, tripped over pews, desperate to get out. Malik staggered, clutching his shoulder. Blood soaked through his shirt, warm and spreading. His breath hitched. The world spun. Tariq stood frozen, eyes wide, staring at the smoking gun in his hand. His chest rose and fell in ragged bursts. His face contorted in agony. I didn't mean to," he whispered, but his voice was drowned out by screams. Malik's knees gave out, and he crumpled to the floor. Keisha was at his side within seconds, cradling his face in her trembling hands, her tears falling fast and hot. "Malik, stay with me, please," she sobbed. His lips parted, his breathing shallow. I never meant to hurt you," he whispered. "I'm sorry." His eyes fluttered shut just as the distant wail of sirens grew louder. Police stormed the scene moments later, paramedics rushing into the sanctuary. Tariq was gone. He had slipped away through the back exit, vanishing into the chaos like smoke. 2 weeks later, after a relentless manhunt, Tariq was discovered holed up in a quiet vacation cabin on the edge of town. He didn't run. He didn't speak. He simply sat on the floor, hands resting in his lap, eyes blank. It was as if the life had already been drained from him. The news swept through the city like wildfire. A pastor living a double life. A forbidden love exposed in front of a full congregation. A sanctuary turned into a crime scene. Keisha never spoke to the media. Some whispered that she had known all along. Others believed she was blindsided. Whatever the truth was, one thing remained certain. She never returned to that church again. In court, Tariq was barely recognizable. Gone was the fiery, passionate man who had burst into that church with a weapon and a heart full of pain. In his place sat someone hollow, sunken eyes, dark circles etched deep from sleepless nights, the weight of guilt and grief heavy on his shoulders. Keisha sat in the front row, still, composed. Her fingers clutched a crumpled tissue she never used. She had cried all her tears already. Now she was here for something else. Closure. Behind her, the congregation filled the courtroom, many of them former parishioners, people who had once praised Pastor Malik as a moral compass, a leader, a man of God. Now they sat in tense silence, waiting for judgment. The prosecutor stood, her voice clear and unwavering. "Ladies and gentlemen, Tariq Jefferson walked into that church on a Sunday morning and shattered lives. He pulled the trigger without hesitation. He aimed at a man he once claimed to love. His actions were not an accident. They were deliberate, premeditated. Today, we seek justice for Pastor Malik Bennett and for every person who trusted and believed in him." Tariq didn't react. He had heard it all before. The testimonies, the witnesses recounting the chaos, the panic, the way blood soaked through Malik's white shirt as he collapsed. He could still hear Keisha's cries, her voice begging him to hold on. He had relived that moment 1,000 times. And still, he couldn't explain how it came to this. His defense attorney tried to paint a picture of heartbreak, of betrayal, of a man driven to the edge by years of broken promises and buried truth. But even love, he argued, does not excuse violence. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the room tensed. The foreman stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Tariq Jefferson, guilty of second-degree murder." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Keisha inhaled sharply, her grip tightening on the bench beneath her. The judge's voice followed, firm, emotionless. "Tariq Jefferson, this court sentences you to 45 years in prison. No possibility of parole for the first 25. Tariq didn't flinch. He nodded once, no resistance, no protest. Just a quiet surrender to the fate he had written with a single bullet. As the bailiff took him by the arm and led him away, Tariq turned. His gaze found Keisha's. There was no anger in his eyes. No plea for forgiveness. Only sorrow. And then he was gone. Outside, the world moved on. But inside that courtroom, something heavy had finally come to an end. A truth that had lived in shadows was finally dragged into the light. A chapter closed. If this story moved you, there's so much more to uncover. The secrets, the betrayal, the heartache that hides behind the faces we trust most. Subscribe now to never miss the drama, the emotion, and the untold truths. Join the journey, hit that button, and be part of the story. This is Ruthless Realities. Until next time.